There was a gas station that had peeled paint and a glass case filled with local maps where someone long ago had circled Highway 68 with warning notes in the margins, "Do not take, only for the lost." A childlike scrawl read, "IT takes if you look back." The clerk shrugged when I asked because the economy ran on tourists who asked polite questions and locals who had learned to look the other way. You get used to living in a place that mutters warnings but doesn't hit your door. The first time a boy in town told me, wide-eyed, that his father no longer collected him from soccer because the father drives the long way, I felt something inside of me break. It is strange how quickly fear can force rationality to mutate. I learned to watch the shoulders of the road rather than the distance. I watched the mirrors less and the light more. A toll booth had been ripped from concrete one winter and sat in a ditch like a fallen god. Signs twisted into indecipherable runes. In the space between the next lamp and the last, I glimpsed movement that could have been wind and listed it as possible deception. One night, 2 cars in front of me stopped dead. I slammed on the gas anyway. A woman stood in the road, hands in the air like someone asking to be chosen. She screamed as I passed, an animal sound torn into pieces, and I heard steel hitting metal behind me like someone throwing themselves at the car. Her scream lingered after she disappeared into the dark. I called the emergency line and spoke to a dispatcher who told me a snowplow had cleared the lane earlier in the day. They took my report but did not reveal the call that came in at 3 that morning saying simply, "We tried to help and we all did something wrong." The man who called was crying like a child. I made it through night after night by following rules that felt like prayers. If the road told me to go, I went. If my phone displayed "Do not look," I refused to look. But rules wear thin when the thing hunting you can change the world around it. Once, my cheap GPS rerouted me into a cul-de-sac that didn't exist, and I realized with a visceral jolt that the map itself could be tampered with. Highway 68 is not a road on paper alone, it's a place with a taste, a will, and patience. Then, the worst part, the thing started talking. Not in the garbled whispers that had been under the radio, but in voices ripped from memory. Drivers started hearing phone-in requests from people on the shoulder they knew. Mothers calling their son home with the exact pet name only family used. A man drove past a collapsed pickup and his own daughter's voice, recorded once on a toy, called from somewhere behind him, singing an old show tune, and he swerved, and the road took him. The testimonies are always awful because they have a human edge, this voice that calls your name, that knows your history, your nicknames, your secret gestured code from the past. Even people who are strong say the moment you hear your dead wife call out from the bushes, you want to reach for that voice. You want to go there and hug it. That is the trap the road makes for you. It took me almost everything to keep driving toward the town that would be the end of this stretch. I say end, but there's no real end that feels like a happy one. I remember a car behind me fusing its lights into the night like a second set of teeth. In the reflection of the rear view, the thing that had been smiling pressed a hand against the glass and, for a flicker, the back seat filled with small faces, eyes blank as coins. My hands were numb but steady. I sped up and the car behind me screamed like a mouth-tearing fabric. It didn't pass me, it never did. When I finally found actual street lamps and real people at a motel off a county road, I parked in a well-lit lot and sat in my car until dawn. The motel clerk's plastic smile slipped, and she grabbed my hand and said, "You got out. You shouldn't be here talking about it. People tell you to forget when the world has chosen to forgive you in public but not in quiet." She gave me coffee and a pack of cigarettes without asking. She told me she had lost a brother to the highway and that she had dreams where the road came into her house at night. The motel woman joked, but the hollowness behind her eyes was an old scar. At first I thought leaving was the end. I went home, And the sunlight felt like a lie because you always think waking will reset the slate. But the road writes on you. Nights later, when my head hit the pillow and the house was quiet, I'd hear the whispering again, not from a radio but from the space behind the plaster. I would wake to find a faint smear of dirt on my porch step, as if something had breathed onto it, as if it had leaned in close to see if the house was empty. Once, I woke to the sound of fabric scraping, a slow dragging noise like a hem being pulled across floorboards. My skin prickled the way it did on the highway, the same chill swollen with months of desert wind. Months became years. I tried to tell people but the language had changed on their tongues. You say words and they hear tourist stories or college pranks. The closest I got to something like closure was a small memorial near the diner, names written on a scrap of plywood, children's names, some unknown, some remembered. People left candles that melted in the sun and small toys that the wind rearranged. You want to wrap yourself in community, to make meaning, to hear a voice say, "We remember," but the truth is collective memory frays faster than rope. The last thing I learned, the road doesn't just take people. It takes certainty. It makes you doubt every map, every GPS coordinate, every sound you love. It polishes away the edges of common sense until you are left with the raw, nearest thing, instinct. And that instinct, that little gnawing voice, is often the difference between a story you tell and a story that ends you. Sometimes, when the world is still and the night is thin, I will check my rearview mirror and see nothing but the road and my tired face. I do not look long. I do not allow myself the curiosity. But for a second that feels as long as the miles I left behind, I think about the eyes I saw reflected in the glass that night. The way they smiled like someone who knew a private joke. I think about the way the signposts seemed to wink at me in the dark. And I think about how many people, on highways and back roads, feel deep in their bellies a truth they can't quite say, that some places keep company with us, and sometimes, if you slow down long enough, they will learn your name.